state of emergency. In Brazil, giant sinkhole is swallowing Buriticupu. Thousands evacuated. Imagine waking up one morning to find cracks running across your street, creeping toward your home like silent warnings from the earth itself. You brush it off, hoping it's nothing, but the next day the cracks are wider. Then, in the dead of night, a deep, guttural rumble shakes the ground. Before you can react, a massive hole opens up, swallowing everything in its path. Roads, houses, trees. Families scramble to escape, their screams drowned out by the sound of crumbling earth. This isn't the plot of a disaster movie. This is reality in Buriticupu, a city in Brazil that is quite literally disappearing before its residents' eyes. For years, Buriticupu has been quietly battling a hidden enemy beneath its surface. Sinkholes, deep, gaping chasms, known locally as vocais, have been forming at an alarming rate, growing larger and more dangerous with each passing storm. Now things have reached a breaking point. The city is in a state of emergency, and thousands of people are being forced to flee before their homes are swallowed whole. Streets are splitting apart, buildings are collapsing, and the land that once felt solid beneath people's feet is now turning into an unpredictable and deadly trap. Geologists and environmental experts have been warning about this for decades, but the situation has spiraled beyond control. Buriticupu's soil, naturally weak and sandy, has been made even more unstable by years of deforestation, heavy rains, and reckless urban expansion. Without the deep roots of trees to hold the ground together, the earth is crumbling away, leaving entire neighborhoods at risk. And with each new rainfall, the cracks widen and more land disappears. For the families living here, every moment is filled with uncertainty. Maria Silva, a mother of 3, woke up to find her backyard had collapsed into a hole 5 meters deep overnight. Her children used to play there. Now she's too afraid to sleep, fearing the ground beneath her home could give way at any moment. "We don't know when it will happen, but we know it will," she says, her voice shaking. "We are waiting for the earth to take our house. Emergency teams are working around the clock, evacuating families and trying to prevent further destruction. But the reality is, there's no stopping nature's force. Entire communities have been forced to abandon their homes, some with only minutes to gather their belongings before the ground split open beneath them. Those who stay behind do so with no choice. Many have nowhere else to go, no money to relocate, and no clear answers about what comes next. The government has stepped in, declaring a state of emergency and promising aid. But for many, help is coming too late. The damage is already done. Families who have lost everything are now crammed into overcrowded shelters, waiting for solutions that may never come. And for those still in their homes, the fear is constant. Every creak of the walls, every distant rumble, could mean the beginning of the end. What's happening in Buriticupu isn't just a local disaster. It's a warning about the consequences of deforestation, unregulated urban growth, and climate change. Scientists say that if the root causes aren't addressed, Buriticupu won't be the last city to face this fate. Other regions in the Amazon, and even beyond Brazil, could see similar disasters unfold in the years to come. But as the earth keeps tearing itself apart, one question remains. How much more can Buriticupu take before it disappears completely? And if you think this is terrifying, what's happening in Australia right now will leave you speechless. A disaster of even greater magnitude is unfolding, and the destruction is just beginning. Stay with us, because what you're about to see next will change the way you look at the world forever. Buriticupu wasn't always like this. Just a few decades ago, It was a quiet city in the heart of Brazil's Amazon region. Surrounded by lush greenery and thriving wildlife, families built their homes here, trusting the land beneath them, never imagining that one day it would betray them. But the cracks didn't appear overnight. The disaster that is swallowing Buriticupu today has been in the making for years, silently, growing beneath the surface, while life carried on as usual. It started small, subtle shifts in the ground, barely noticeable. A few homes reported minor damage, walls forming thin fractures, doors no longer closing properly. People assumed it was just the wear and tear of time, something a little repair work could fix. But then, the cracks deepened, roads buckled, houses tilted, and before anyone could truly grasp what was happening, entire sections of neighborhoods were vanishing into the earth. The city's problems run far deeper than the sinkholes. Scientists say Buriticupu is built on naturally unstable ground, but that alone isn't what's causing this catastrophe. Decades of deforestation have stripped away the rainforest, leaving the soil loose and vulnerable. Heavy rains, which were once absorbed by the dense vegetation, now pound directly into the ground, eroding it faster than nature can recover. And on top of it all, rapid urban expansion has only made things worse. Buildings have been constructed without proper geological studies, roads paved without consideration of the land's weaknesses. Now, the consequences of these choices are unfolding in the most devastating way possible. Among those caught in this nightmare is Juan Pereira, a local shop owner who has lived in Buriticupu for over 30 years. His store once stood on a busy street, filled with customers buying fresh fruit and household essentials. But last month, a massive sinkhole opened just a few feet away, swallowing half the road. His business is still standing, for now, but cracks have begun creeping up the walls, and he knows it's only a matter of time before everything is lost. We build our lives here, he says, looking out at the deep pit where his neighbors' homes used to be. Where are we supposed to go now? The government has sent engineers and rescue teams to assess the damage, but many residents feel abandoned. While officials promise aid, the reality on the ground is far more chaotic. Families who have been evacuated are left in limbo, crammed into overcrowded shelters with little information about what happens next. Some are refusing to leave their homes, despite the risk. Where else can we go? Asks 67-year-old Rosa Almeida, who has lived in Buriticupu her entire life. If the earth takes my house, it takes my house, but I have nowhere else to go. Meanwhile, scientists studying the phenomenon warn that things could get even worse. The rainy season is far from over, and each new storm could accelerate the destruction. Every day, the ground is shifting beneath the city, widening the cracks, deepening the holes. What's happening in Buriticupu may be just the beginning. The sense of urgency is growing. With each passing week, more homes are being evacuated, more families forced to pack up their lives and leave behind everything they've ever known. Some are trying to fight back. Local activists are pushing for more sustainable land management, calling for an end to reckless deforestation and unregulated construction. But these efforts take time, and time is something Buriticupu doesn't have. As the tension builds, there's one question no one can answer. How much longer before the city is lost forever? The ground is still shifting, the cracks are still growing, and no one knows where the next sinkhole will appear. But one thing is certain, this is far from over, and if you think this is terrifying, what's happening in Australia right now will leave you speechless. A disaster of even greater magnitude is unfolding, and the destruction is just beginning. Stay with us, because what you're about to see next will change the way you look at the world forever. The situation in Buriticupu has gone from desperate to disastrous. The cracks in the ground are no longer just warnings. They are splitting, open without notice, swallowing entire streets in seconds. Families who thought they had more time are now running for their lives as their homes collapse into the earth. Emergency sirens wail across the city, but for many, it's already too late. The land beneath them is giving way, piece by piece, and there's no stopping it. One of the most terrifying moments came just days ago, when a massive sinkhole opened in the middle of a crowded neighborhood. Residents had been watching the ground shift for weeks, but no one expected the collapse to happen so suddenly. Without warning, a deep roar echoed through the area, and within seconds, homes, cars, and trees were gone. Witnesses described the horror of seeing their neighbors' houses disappear before their eyes, leaving behind nothing but a jagged pit of darkness. It was like the earth just swallowed them, one survivor says, shaking his head in disbelief. One moment they were there, and then, nothing. The government has ramped up evacuation efforts, but many people refuse to leave. Some believe their homes are still safe, while others simply have nowhere to go. Shelters are overflowing, and aid is slow to reach those who need it most. Frustration and fear are spreading just as fast as the destruction. Scientists warn that Buriticupu is in a dangerous cycle. More rain will lead to more collapses, and with the land already weakened, the next disaster could be even bigger. João Pereira, the shop owner who once stood in front of his crumbling store, has finally made the heartbreaking decision to leave. "I fought to stay," he says, his voice heavy with emotion. "But now I know this place won't be here much longer." He packs up what little he can carry and joins hundreds of others, making their way out of the city, unsure if they'll ever return. For those who have already lost everything, the road ahead is uncertain. Rosa Almeida, the elderly woman who refused to leave her home, has been forced out after the ground near her house collapsed overnight. She sits outside a shelter now, staring into the distance. "It's strange," she says softly. "You live in one place your whole life, and then one day it's just gone." Despite the devastation, there is still hope. Scientists and environmentalists are using Buriticupu as a wake-up call, pushing for better land management and stricter construction regulations. Community groups are working together to support those displaced, proving that even in the face of disaster, resilience remains. But for Buriticupu itself, the future is uncertain. The city is disappearing, piece by piece, and no one knows how much longer it will last. This is not just a story about one city, it's a warning. The destruction of Buriticupu is a direct result of human impact on the environment, from deforestation to poorly planned urban development. If lessons are not learned, more cities could face the same fate. The earth is giving us signals, and if we don't listen, we may soon find ourselves watching more places crumble before our eyes. Buriticupu is sinking, but across the world, another disaster is unfolding. In Australia, fires are raging out of control, consuming everything in their path. What's happening there is just as shocking, and it could change the way we think about the future of our planet. Stay with us, because what you're about to see next is just the beginning.